Welcome to Private Stories, where people discover who they really are. Adrian Cole sat at his old but carefully maintained desk, the kind of place where every object had its purpose and every detail reflected order. Papers were arranged in precise stacks, several books rested neatly beside them, and two mechanical pencils lay parallel as if measured with a ruler. In the corner of the room, a small aquarium hummed softly, its deep blue light spilling across the dim walls and filling the space with a calm, almost hypnotic glow. It was just another quiet evening in his controlled and predictable life, until the knock came. Short, sharp, unexpected. Adrian frowned slightly and stood up, already feeling the faint disturbance ripple through his otherwise disciplined routine. When he opened the door, a young courier stood there, breath visible in the cool hallway air, a bright red delivery bag slung over his shoulder. "You have a letter for Adrian Cole, sir." His voice was casual, almost careless. Adrian raised an eyebrow. "From whom?" "Traffic enforcement," the courier replied quickly, already turning away as if eager to leave. The door clicked shut. Traffic enforcement. Adrian exhaled slowly, already assuming it was a minor fine, perhaps a small violation, something routine, something meaningless. He walked back to his desk, picked up the envelope, and opened it without any urgency. But the moment his eyes landed on the contents, everything inside him stopped. There it was, a photograph, a still frame captured by an automatic camera. His car. He recognized it instantly, the familiar lines of his dark gray sedan, polished and maintained with the same care he gave to every aspect of his life. But that was not what made his hands freeze. Behind the wheel was not him, it was his wife, Natalie, her dark hair falling over her shoulders exactly the way he had seen 1,000 times before. His breath caught. No, that was not possible. But then his gaze shifted, and everything inside him shattered. A man sat beside her, a stranger, relaxed, confident, shameless. His hand rested on Natalie's knee as if it belonged there, as if Adrian had never existed. Adrian slowly lowered himself into the chair. His heart began pounding, heavy and metallic like a hammer striking steel. He could not look away. This was wrong. Impossible. Natalie would never. She was unpredictable sometimes, a little careless, a little too free in her emotions. But this was betrayal. No, it had to be a mistake. His mind clung to that thought for a brief, fragile second. But the image was too clear, too precise, too real. There was no doubt. The truth stood in front of him without mercy. His thoughts accelerated, cold and sharp. Who is he? Why are they in my car? How long? And the most dangerous question, why? Adrian closed his eyes for a moment, then stood up and walked to the bathroom. Cold water hit his face. Once, twice, again. When he looked up into the mirror, his expression had already changed. The shock was gone, replaced by something quieter, more dangerous, control. He breathed slowly, step by step. No emotions, no mistakes. If she betrayed me, I will know everything, and then I will decide. He returned to his desk, opened a drawer, and took out a small flash drive. His movements were precise, almost mechanical. The system loaded. Files began to restore. Deleted messages, hidden images, fragments of truth buried beneath carelessness. And one by one, they surfaced. Chats, photos, moments, proof. The pattern was undeniable. This was not a mistake. Not a single moment of weakness. It had been going on for months. Then came the final blow. A photograph. Natalie and the man, standing together near a luxury beach villa. The same destination Adrian had planned as a surprise for their anniversary. The same dream he had carefully built in silence. The man smiled with effortless confidence, as if the world belonged to him. Damian Brooks. Adrian whispered the name slowly. Tasted bitter, heavy, permanent. He stood up and began pacing the room. The pain was still there, but it was no longer chaos. It was fuel. Cold. Focused. Precise. He stopped, turned toward the mirror, and looked at himself. For the first time, he did not see the man he used to be. The patient one. The calm one. The forgiving one. That man was gone. In his place stood someone else. Someone who understood consequences. If you choose to betray me, Natalie, be ready to face what comes next. His voice was quiet, but absolute. The plan had already begun forming. And this was only the beginning. The next morning arrived too quietly. Adrian had not truly slept. He had simply waited for the night to end. Soft gray light slipped through the curtains, drawing thin lines across the ceiling as he stared upward, motionless. This was the first day of something new. Not healing. Not yet. But separation. A clean break. Cold and absolute. He rose without hesitation, dressed in dark jeans and a crisp black shirt. Every movement controlled, almost ritualistic. When he stepped into the kitchen, Natalie was already there. She stood by the stove, humming softly, flipping pancakes with an ease that once would have made him smile. Now it felt like watching a stranger perform a familiar scene. "Good morning," she said lightly, not even turning around. "Morning," Adrian replied. His voice was calm, too calm. He sat at the table, poured himself water, and took a slow sip. Inside his mind, words burned. Questions. Accusations. Truth. But none of them were allowed to escape. Not yet. Silence was his first weapon. Distance his second. That day passed in a strange, stretched rhythm. At work, Adrian moved through tasks like a machine, efficient and precise, but detached from everything around him. By the afternoon, he made a decision. A necessary one. He walked into his manager's office. "I'm resigning." The words were simple. Final. His manager blinked in confusion. "Resigning? Adrian, you are one of our best people. I need time to reconsider my priorities." That was all he said. No explanations. No hesitation. By the evening, it was done. One more thread cut from his old life. When he returned home earlier than usual, Natalie was sitting in the living room flipping through a glossy magazine. She looked up, surprised. "You're home early. I had things to handle." He didn't stop, didn't explain, just walked past her. Inside the bedroom, he closed the door and locked it. Then he began. Documents, car registration, property papers, bank accounts, every detail checked twice, every risk eliminated. Money was transferred into a new account. Ownership clarified. Control secured. There would be no chaos. No vulnerability. Everything would be calculated. That night, he packed only what mattered. Laptop, documents, a few clothes. The rest meant nothing. Objects without meaning were just weight. And Adrian had no intention of carrying anything unnecessary into his new life. The next evening, Natalie walked into the kitchen and froze. Adrian was sitting there, a suitcase at his feet. "You're leaving." Her voice trembled slightly. "Yes." The answer was simple, sharp, final. "For how long?" "A while." She stepped closer, confusion turning into unease. "Adrian, what is going on? Is this about work?" He let out a quiet breath. A faint, almost bitter smile touched his lips. "It's not about work, Natalie. It's about us." She opened her mouth to speak, but he raised his hand, stopping her. "Not now. Not like this. Just accept it." He stood up, picked up the suitcase, and walked past her. He did not look back. Not at her. Not at the life he was leaving behind. Outside, cold air hit his face. Sharp. Real. He inhaled deeply and stepped into the waiting car. The door closed, and just like that, one chapter ended. His new apartment was small but clean, minimal, controlled, perfect. A temporary base, a place to think, to plan, to rebuild. The first thing Adrian did was cut every connection. Shared accounts, access, financial support, gone. Then came something even more important. Silence. No calls. No messages. No explanations. To Natalie, he became absence itself. A void she could not reach. Days passed. Then a week. Adrian's life transformed into structure and purpose. Every action aligned with one goal: justice. Artem Reed was the first ally he turned to. An old friend. Owner of a modest roadside motel outside the city. A man who knew how to keep secrets. And more importantly, when not to ask questions. When Adrian walked into the motel lobby, Artem immediately noticed something had changed. "Adrian, my friend, you look like a man who's about to start a war." Adrian sat down at a wooden table in the corner. His expression calm, but his eyes cold. "I need information." Artem leaned forward, his usual playful tone gone. "Talk." Adrian told him everything. The letter, the photograph, the evidence, the betrayal. He spoke without emotion, like a man describing a business strategy, not the collapse of his marriage. When he finished, silence settled between them. "Damn," Artem muttered. "Never thought Natalie would be that kind of woman." "Neither did I." Adrian's voice was quiet, but steady. "So what now?" Artem asked. Adrian leaned closer, his voice lowered, controlled. "First, I want to know everything about Damian Brooks. Who he is, what he does, where he spends his time, his weaknesses, his mistakes." Artem studied him carefully, then nodded. "I know people. Give me a couple of days. I'll dig." Adrian extended his hand. Artem shook it firmly. The first move had been made, but Adrian knew this was only the surface. The real game had just begun. 2 days later, the first cracks appeared in Damian Brooks's perfect world. Adrian sat in his new apartment, a cup of untouched coffee cooling beside him as Artem laid out the information. Names, transactions, connections, patterns. Everything Damian had tried to hide beneath expensive suits and confident smiles. "He's not as clean as he looks," Artem said, sliding a folder across the table. Adrian opened it slowly. Inside was a different version of the man from the photograph. Not a confident winner, but a parasite. Financial shortcuts, risky deals, dependence on someone else's power. And then, the key detail. "He's married," Artem added. Adrian's gaze sharpened. "To who?" "Victoria Hayes." The name settled heavily in the room. Artem continued. "She owns the company where he's CEO. Without her, he's nothing." Adrian leaned back slightly. For the first time, something close to satisfaction flickered in his chest. "So his strength is borrowed." "Exactly." Artem smirked faintly. "And that means it can be taken away." Adrian closed the folder. "Then it's time I meet her." Victoria Hayes arrived exactly on time. She walked into the cafe with quiet authority, her posture flawless, her blonde hair perfectly styled, her expression composed but distant. Her sharp blue eyes immediately found Adrian. "You asked for this meeting, Mr. Cole." Her voice was controlled, professional, but beneath it, tension. Adrian stood and gestured toward the chair. "Thank you for coming, Victoria." She sat down slowly, placing a slim leather folder on the table. "I assume this is important." "It is." Adrian didn't rush, didn't dramatize. He simply reached into his own folder and placed the photograph on the table. The same one. The moment everything had begun. Victoria looked at it. At first, her expression didn't change. Then her fingers tightened slightly. "What is this?" Her voice was quieter now, but sharper. "A traffic camera image," Adrian replied. "Your husband and my wife." Silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. Victoria stared at the photo longer than necessary, as if trying to find a version of reality where it meant something else. But there was none. When she finally looked up, her composure had cracks. Small, but visible. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because you deserve the truth. Just like I did." Her jaw tightened. She leaned back slightly, crossing her arms. "And what do you want from me?" Adrian met her gaze without hesitation. Justice. Her eyes narrowed. That's a dangerous word. Only if used carelessly. He slid another folder toward her. Inside. Documents. Proof. Every financial manipulation Damien had tried to bury. Victoria opened it. Page after page. Transaction after transaction. Her face slowly changed. From disbelief to understanding to anger. He used company money. Her voice was barely above a whisper. For her. For trips. For gifts. For everything. Adrian said calmly. And not only for her. The silence that followed was different. No longer confusion. Now it was decision. Victoria closed the folder sharply. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice when she spoke was firm. What exactly are you proposing? Adrian leaned forward. We don't act emotionally. We act precisely. You confront him where it hurts the most. His position. His reputation. His illusion of control. And you, Victoria, have the power to do that. She studied him carefully. You're very calm for someone in your position. Adrian allowed himself a faint, almost cold smile. Emotion is a luxury I can't afford right now. Victoria exhaled slowly, then nodded. All right, we do this properly. Her eyes hardened. I don't forgive betrayal. Not in business. Not in life. Adrian extended his hand. Neither do I. She shook it. And in that moment, an alliance was formed. A week later, everything was ready. The boardroom was filled. Executives, lawyers, partners. The atmosphere was formal, predictable, controlled, just the way Damien liked it. He entered the room with his usual confidence, adjusting his cufflinks, offering casual smiles, completely unaware that this would be the day his world collapsed. Victoria sat at the head of the table, impeccable, cold, unreachable. Adrian watched from a distance, silent, observing. Ladies and gentlemen, Victoria began, her voice steady. Today we will review financial operations from the past 2 years. Damien shifted slightly, but maintained his composure. Important, of course, but perhaps we can... No, Damien. Her interruption was sharp, immediate. We will discuss it now. She nodded toward the screen. A lawyer stepped forward, and the evidence appeared. Transaction after transaction. Every hidden movement. Every lie. First, Damien smiled. Dismissive. Confident. But as the details unfolded, that confidence began to crack. Then crumble. Then disappear. This is a misunderstanding. He stood abruptly, trying to regain control. Victoria stood as well. Her voice cut through the room like glass. Is it a misunderstanding when company funds pay for private villas? For jewelry? For your mistress? The room froze, every eye on him, every silence louder than the last. Damien's face lost color. You don't understand. He tried again, desperate now. I understand perfectly. Victoria replied. You betrayed me. You betrayed this company. And now, you face the consequences. Her final words landed like a verdict. You are removed from your position effective immediately. And this matter will be forwarded for legal investigation. Damien collapsed back into his chair. Defeated. Exposed. Finished. Outside the building, the air felt different. Cleaner. Lighter. Victoria stood beside Adrian. It's done, she said quietly. Adrian nodded. This was only the first step. She looked at him. There's more, isn't there? Yes. He answered calmly. Because for Adrian, justice was not a moment. It was a process. And he had only just begun. The city felt different that night. Quieter. As if something invisible had shifted. Adrian stood by the window of his apartment, watching the distant lights flicker across the skyline. Damien had fallen. Publicly. Completely. But Adrian did not feel triumph. Not yet. Because this had never been only about him. There was still one loose end. And her name was Natalie. She noticed the silence first. Not the obvious kind. Not the absence of words. But something deeper. The absence of control. Her calls went unanswered. Her messages remained unread. Her access to shared accounts disappeared one by one. And for the first time, Natalie realized she no longer knew where Adrian was, or who he had become. Days turned into a week, then another. The uncertainty began to consume her. Damien stopped replying, then disappeared entirely. No explanations, no promises, nothing, just like Adrian. But unlike Adrian, Damien had taken everything he could, and left nothing behind. By the time Natalie found Adrian's new address, she barely resembled the woman from the photograph. Her dark hair was tied carelessly, her eyes tired, red, as if sleep had abandoned her completely. Adrian had just returned home that evening. The air outside was cold, sharp against his skin. He reached for the door, but before the key turned, a voice stopped him. Adrian. He froze, just for a fraction of a second, then slowly turned. Natalie stood a few steps away, fragile, uncertain, almost unfamiliar. What are you doing here? His voice was calm, but distant. I need to talk to you, please. There was something in her tone. Not manipulation, not arrogance. Something broken. Adrian watched her for a moment, then opened the door. Come in. Inside, the apartment was quiet, minimal, controlled, a reflection of the man he had become. Natalie stepped in slowly, looking around as if trying to understand this new version of his life. Say what you came to say. Adrian sat down, his posture relaxed but guarded. She remained standing at first, then slowly lowered herself into the chair across from him. I ruined everything. Her voice cracked. Adrian said nothing. I didn't understand what I had. She continued, fighting to keep her composure. You were always there, always steady, always real. A bitter smile touched his lips, and that was not enough. Her eyes filled with tears. I thought I wanted something else, something exciting, something different. She shook her head, but it wasn't real. None of it. Adrian leaned back slightly, watching her. Not with anger, not anymore, just distance. And now, he asked quietly, now I see everything clearly. Too late. Her hands trembled. He left. She whispered. Of course he did. Adrian replied. He only stayed while there was something to take. Natalie lowered her head. I have nothing now. The silence stretched between them. Heavy. Final. Adrian stood up slowly, walked to the window, then turned back to her. Why are you here, Natalie? She looked up at him, her voice barely holding together. Not to ask you to take me back. He waited. I know I don't deserve that. Pause. I just needed you to know that I understand what I did to you. Adrian studied her face, searching, not for truth, but for meaning. And for the first time, he saw it. Not excuses, not manipulation, just regret. Deep, irreversible. He exhaled slowly. I forgave you. Her eyes widened slightly, a fragile spark of hope appearing for a second. Really? Yes. He stepped closer, but his voice remained steady. But forgiveness doesn't mean return. The hope faded. Quietly. It just means I'm not carrying this anymore. Natalie nodded, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. I understand. She stood up. You look different, she said softly. I am. A faint pause. Are you happy? Adrian didn't hesitate. Yes. That answer hit harder than any accusation. She nodded once, then walked toward the door. When it closed behind her, there was no echo, no weight, no regret, just silence and peace. Later that evening, Adrian sat in the kitchen, turning a cup of tea slowly in his hands. The door opened quietly. Emily stepped in, her soft presence filling the space without effort. Everything okay? She asked gently. Adrian looked at her, And for the first time that day, his expression softened. Yeah. Just the past saying goodbye. Emily walked closer, placed her hand over his. Sometimes it comes back, just to show us how far we've come. He smiled faintly. Yeah. And for the first time, it really felt true, because the past no longer had power over him. And whatever came next, he was ready. Time did not rush anymore. It moved steadily, calm, almost gentle, as if Adrian's life had finally found its rhythm. The house they chose stood on the quiet edge of the city. Wide windows, warm light, a small yard where laughter began to replace silence. What started as a temporary solution slowly became something real, something alive. Emily moved in first. Then her younger daughter Lily filled the space with energy, curiosity, endless questions. Adrian hadn't expected it. This feeling, this warmth, it didn't crash into him like passion. It built slowly, carefully, like trust. Evenings became their favorite ritual. Dinner together, soft conversations, Lily's laughter echoing through the rooms, and sometimes, just silence, but the kind that didn't feel empty, felt safe. Emily stood at the stove one evening, wearing a simple light sweater, her chestnut hair loosely tied. Adrian paused in the doorway, watching her. There was something about her presence, something steady, real, not loud, not dramatic, but undeniable. He realized this was what he had been missing. Not excitement, not chaos, but peace. "You're staring again," Emily said with a soft smile, not even turning around. Adrian chuckled quietly. "Can you blame me?" She glanced over her shoulder, her green eyes warm. "Maybe not." Lily ran into the kitchen at that moment. "Adrian, come see what I built." He followed her without hesitation, and as he sat on the floor helping her assemble a small model house, he felt something shift inside him. Completely, irreversibly. This was no longer temporary. This was his life. Weeks turned into months, and the distance from his past became absolute. Damian Brooks was convicted for financial fraud. His name disappeared from headlines as quickly as it had risen. Victoria Hayes rebuilt her company. Stronger, sharper, untouchable. And one evening she called Adrian. "It's over." Her voice calm, controlled. "He's been sentenced." Adrian stood by the window again, just like the night everything began. But now, felt different. "You did it," he said. "We did it." She corrected. A brief pause, then softer. "You deserve your life back, Adrian." He looked toward the living room, where Emily and Lily were laughing together. "I already have it." After the call ended, Adrian stayed there for a moment, thinking, not about revenge, not about pain, but about how far everything had come. Later that night, he found Emily sitting on the couch, reading quietly. He sat beside her, closer than usual. She looked up. "Something on your mind?" He took a slow breath, then reached into his pocket. A small box, simple, but meaningful. "Emily." His voice was steady, but softer than ever before. "I thought I lost the ability to feel something real. But you showed me something different, something stronger." She closed the book slowly, her eyes already glistening. "You gave me peace," he continued, "and I don't want a life without you in it." He opened the box. "Will you marry me?" For a second, everything stopped. Then Emily smiled, through tears. A quiet, beautiful, yes. Lily appeared almost instantly. "Did she say yes?" Emily laughed. "Yes, I did." "Then he's staying forever, right?" Adrian looked at her, and for the first time, that word felt complete. Forever, yes. He pulled them both into an embrace. And in that moment, he understood something simple, but powerful. He didn't win by destroying someone else. He won by rebuilding himself. Spring came again, bright, alive, full of promise. Their wedding was small, warm, surrounded by people who had become family. Victoria stood beside them, smiling with quiet pride. Artem raised a glass later that evening, to second chances, to truth, and to finding something real after everything falls apart. Everyone echoed the toast, but Adrian didn't need words. He just looked at Emily, then at Lily, and felt it. This was it. Not revenge, not closure, something greater, a new beginning. Months later, on a quiet winter evening, Adrian stood by the fireplace, holding an old folder, the last pieces of his past. Photos, documents, memories that once carried weight. Now, they meant nothing. He tossed them into the fire and watched them disappear, completely, without hesitation, without regret. When he returned to the living room, Emily and Lily were already asleep under a blanket. Soft light, warm silence, peace. Adrian sat beside them, wrapped his arm around them, and closed his eyes. For the first time in a long time, there was nothing left to fix, nothing left to prove, nothing left to fight, only something to protect, to love, to live, and that was more than enough. Thank you for watching this video to the end. Visit our channel for interesting and intriguing stories.